to a brand new series on my channel where I'll be reviewing modern retro games. So what do I mean by modern retro? Well, to me that falls into two categories. First of those is new games on old hardware, and by that I generally mean homebrew games. This is an area of retro gaming I've wanted to take a look at for a while, so I'll be looking at homebrew games on some of my favourite systems, including the Commodore 64, BBC Micro, Sega Mega Drive and maybe a few others. And the second area I'll be looking at is old games on new systems, and by new systems I typically mean the PS4 for me because that's the only modern system I really use. So I'll be looking at retro compilations, games with a retro flavour that may not be based on a retro IP, and maybe even a few sequels to retro games as well. So I was originally going to kick this series off a couple of weeks ago at Christmas time with a particular game. I'm still going to look at that game even though it is now a little bit late to think about playing it, but it is a game that I'm quite close to, so I'm going to start things off with this series with a homebrew game for the Commodore 64 called Quasimodo's Christmas Caper. Let's take a look at it.
So this is Quasimodo's Christmas Caper, a new game for the Commodore 64. This was originally supposed to be released just before Christmas, but the developer had a few last minute technical problems with the game, and he was also ill as well, so it was delayed a little bit. It was released the first week in January. It was developed by RWX Designs. You can find the game on rwxdesigns.itch.io, and I'll put a link to that in the pinned comment on this video. RWX Designs is Rob Wilson, and he was one of the guys that worked, or I should say appeared, on my Budget Publisher Showdown series. That's how I first got in touch with him, and as this game was close to completion he asked me to do some testing on it. I gave him some feedback, and some of the things I suggested did end up in the game, so I appreciate the opportunity to actually have a play of the game before it was released and give some feedback on the gameplay. Hopefully people who've played the game now have appreciated the game overall, and so I know this game pretty well. So I also got a thanks on the thanks list, as you can see there, so I appreciate that as well. So yeah, as I said, I know the game pretty well. I do think the game can be quite tricky for the first time player. I'll probably show reasonably good playability through it because I've played it so much and given some feedback on some of the elements of the game. So starting off with the title screen, as I would always do when I'm reviewing a game, you can see it's very nicely done. It says Quasimodo's Christmas Caper, a nice big colourful logo, and you can see Quasimodo standing in the snow at the bottom, some nice trees in the background. The game has a high score. It doesn't have a high score table, but it does record the highest score, and it's also got some options. So you push up to access the options menu, and then within the options menu you push down to select an option and right to move between the options. So the first option is the difficulty level, which it defaults to middle, which is the medium. There's also difficult, the hard level if you like, horribly horrid, and also lemon squeezy. I'm going to put it on that mode to start with just while I talk through some of the gameplay elements, and then I might switch to playing it on medium. The main differences for the difficulty levels are the amount of time you get for each level and also the number of lives you start with. It's also got a widescreen mode. As you can see, it's got black borders, but if you push right for widescreen mode it nicely makes it widescreen on your widescreen TV if you've got one and you're using one. So yeah, that looks nice. I don't know why you wouldn't play it in that mode, to be honest, but it's a nice feature and it does look quite cool when you first switch it to widescreen mode. As you can see, the top and bottom of the left and right hand borders are coloured white, and then the middle bit is coloured the background of whatever level is, the sort of the sky if you like. So once I've chosen those, there's also Wimp mode, but that's locked until you've played through the game at least once. That's basically an infinite lives mode. So I'll push back up to get to the title screen, and the other thing I haven't mentioned is the music, which is pretty cool. Let that play in the background for a second. So yeah, it's a fairly short tune on the title screen, but it's nicely done. It's kind of a little jolly sort of, it's not a Christmas music as such, but it's definitely got a sort of wintry feel to it, I think. So yeah, that's nice as well. So that's pretty much it for the title screen. The only other thing to mention is that you press fire to play, so that's what I'm going to do. Actually no, the other thing to mention is the snow in the background and the little sort of glittering of the stars in the background as well, all very nicely done too. The graphics in this game are really nice, and we'll get onto those now as we press fire to play. Okay, so I'm in game now, and I'm Quasimodo. Bottom left just appeared out of this little hut. The idea of the game primarily is to collect the snowballs, which you can see I'm doing. I'm just going to position myself when I've collected a few of these to talk through some of the gameplay elements without actually moving around. So yeah, the primary objective is to collect the snowballs. There's also a secondary objective to collect the stars. That's optional, but if you do collect enough stars, then you get access to a bonus level at the end of the game. You also stars also give you more points as well, so it's worth collecting them for that reason. The elves that are moving around the screen with the little Santa hats on, if you touch them you die, and eventually when the time runs out, and this is about to happen momentarily, when the timer gets down to 100, they will be equipped with guns that fire snowballs at you. Those snowballs will do you some damage, diminishing your health, because you've got a health bar at the bottom of the screen as well, or an energy bar, but they will also take away one of the stars you've collected, so they jeopardize you in a couple of ways. And now when the timer gets down to 0, as you've just seen, you also get a indestructible snowman called Boris that chases you around the screen. I've just lost a life there hitting that elf, by the way. And he drains your health as well. He doesn't kill you outright, but he does drain your health. When you've collected all the snowballs and optionally the stars, but certainly the snowballs, you go back to the start of the level where you came through the hut, collect a big present for more points, and the level completes, and you move on to the next level. So it's kind of, I would say, a cross between Chucky Egg, going around collecting all the snowballs, but there's also some elements of a game like Bubble Bobble in it. There are power-ups to collect, including a health top-up, which I just collected, and these stars, if you collect those and you collect all the 5 colours of the stars, they spell out the word extra in the top right corner, and that gives you an extra life. So that's very Bubble Bobbly, as is the snowman, who's sort of reminiscent of Baron von Blubber, although in this game he doesn't kill you outright, he does just drain your health. So health's topped up with the Lucozade bottles or energy drink bottles that drop to the bottom of the screen. There's also the stars that you can collect include temporary invincibility, and also a thing that freezes the elves, but it has to be noted that while you freeze the elves, they're still actually lethal to you if you touch them, so that's something to be aware of. So that pretty much covers it, I think, in terms of the gameplay elements. You've got collecting the snowballs, collecting the power-ups, optionally collecting the stars, avoiding the enemies, and obviously jumping around the platforms. So I think that covers it pretty much, so I'm going to quit out now and start again from the medium level. Okay, so back at the title screen, switch to the medium level, so I'm going to press up to exit, and then you don't actually have to do that, you can just press fire at any point and then press fire to start the game. So I'm going to try and play the game a bit more quickly now, and while I'm doing that I'll talk about the other aspects of the game. Firstly, the graphics, as I said earlier, the graphics in this game are lovely. The drawings, the little cute elves are really well done. The snow in the background looks fantastic, I really love that. It's sort of drifting down the screen, it's quite hypnotic almost, really well done. Quasimodo himself is very big, and that can cause some problems in the game, but he's also very well drawn. You've also got the snow on the platforms. When you walk along the platforms you actually leave footprints in the snow, so again, really nicely done. Every aspect of this graphically is fantastic. You also got little things like the Christmas lights hanging from the platforms and things like that, so yeah, all really nicely done. Very impressed with that aspect of it right from the start. So I've just completed the first level. You can see the background changes to black when your time's running out. I'm not a huge fan of that, I do find that makes it a little bit difficult to see certain things, especially on later levels, which we'll get to when the time comes. But there you go, that was the design decision that was made, so fair enough. So yeah, graphics really nice, as I've said. All really nicely put together in that respect. Sounds are good as well. There is a very faint tune in the background that's only been recently added since the game was released, to give it a little bit more in the way of sound. I actually find the sound effects perfectly adequate anyway. The noises for jumping and collecting the stars and the snowballs are all really well done, I think. And you do get those little jingles at the end of a level, and when you get game over there's a little jingle for that as well. So I don't really think it was too bad without the little music in the background, but that does actually add a little bit more to it, so fair enough again. So I'm about to run out of time. As I said, the time limit it's pretty harsh even on the easy level, and especially when you get to the later levels. There is something on the hard level that helps a little bit with that, but I might show that later on. But I have completed the stage again. You do get a bonus for any remaining time if you can manage to complete the level before the time runs out. I think that's quite hard to do if you're going for full completion and collecting all the stars as well as the snowballs. Should probably mention the controls. You might find it a bit strange if you're playing this game that you don't use fire to jump, and fire doesn't seem to do anything. You use up to jump instead, and that's because the fire button comes into play later in the game, which you may or may not see depending on how well I get through it. Doing alright so far. I haven't lost any lives yet. Haven't also gained any extras yet because I haven't collected many of those stars. There is something at the bottom of the screen. There's a couple of things actually on this stage. I'll just use that there. So firstly, there's ice balls, which are like the snowballs, but they freeze you for a second. But when you're unfrozen, you get some temporary invulnerability, which can prove quite useful in certain parts of the game. And also, as you've already seen, there's collapsing platforms from this point onwards as well. They're quite clearly denoted by being blue rather than white. Oh, I've missed that. Just got to get that last snowball there. You'll notice that when you get the last snowball, the snowman disappears and you're able to then collect the item to complete the level. So I've got through the first 3 levels. I think that's shown off most of what the game's got in the early stages. There are more hazards and things added later in the game. So what I might do now is, I don't want to give too much of the game away because I want to leave it a surprise for anyone who's picking it up for the first time. So I might just skip on to some of the later stages now. Just so I can show you some of the other aspects without giving the whole game away. Right, so I'm on level 6 now, and there's a hazard that wasn't on some of the previous ones, which is these black spikes hanging from the ceilings of some of the platforms. Yeah, so they do you damage as well. One thing I also didn't mention was that the white spikes on the ground, you can actually use them. They do you damage, but you can also actually use them as kind of trampolines to jump over things. Might try and give that a try in a moment. So I have managed to collect all the letters for the extra on the previous stage. There you go, you saw the trampoline effect a little bit there. Yeah, that's given me an extra life. I also lost a life though, so kind of negated each other out, but there we go. So it is a pretty tough game. From this level onwards it gets quite difficult. There you can see you can use the freeze ball as a kind of temporary shield as an enemy walks past you, so that's quite a useful thing you can employ. There are a lot of little tricks that can be done. I'll use it again here actually to sort of help you get through the game, and you learn those over time. So it has got a kind of arcade game style gameplay to it where you'll learn little tricks as you go through the game. One thing that is a little bit tricky, and we'll probably see this as I move through the game, is the way you pick up snowballs and stars. It's quite precise, so you can't pick them up with the back half of Quasimodo. You can only really pick them up with his sort of hands from the front and also his feet, and that does present some problems when the snowballs start to stack up on later stages. You can see there I'm not picking that one up, and I'll perhaps try and demonstrate it again here. Nope, can't. But yeah, take my word for it. Basically, it can take some getting used to that. The collision detection is a little bit on the tricky side at times, and the other thing that will cause you some problems, and probably my biggest bugbear of the game, I'll try not to demonstrate it because it'll lose me lives, is there's a moment when, and it's just happened there, when the timer gets down to 100 and the elves get the guns, they freeze, and if you're jumping over an elf or intending to jump over an elf when that happens, you can lose a life accidentally. That's a little bit frustrating at times, but again, it's a thing you have to get used to. Sometimes you have to take your time with the game rather than just dashing through it. But taking your time means that the timer runs out, so that's another reason why it becomes a bit frantic at times. So here's another new aspect to the game that appears on level 8, which is these sort of force field things. It's just above me there, kind of a white barrier, and you have to switch those off. If you don't, then you lose a load of health. You switch them off with this button here and then jump through them. but then they'll reactivate in a second. I'll just try and show what happens if you fall into them. You can see there I lost some health basically. And this is where the game really does start to get quite tricky, because you've got to be trying to get past this elf on the level I'm on here quickly enough to dash through and pick up all these items, and then freeze yourself and get back through before he comes back again. So it does get a little bit more tricky and a bit more strategy is required. So yeah, I'm going to carry on, see how far I get. Oh, here's the snowman again. As I said, it's almost impossible. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is impossible to get through these later levels without running out of time. It's really quite hard, and I think the time limit could be a little bit more generous. When I was playtesting it, we did play around a little bit with the time limits, and these are the ones that were kind of agreed on, but on the hard and medium levels in particular, it is quite difficult to get through the game without the full on panic inducement of the snowman appearing and the elves firing the snowballs and things like that. So I did lose a life, possibly 2 lives during that level, and I didn't even notice. That's probably another thing that you need to be wary of, is that sometimes it's not very clear when you lose a life, so you just have to be a little bit careful. Froze myself again, but so yeah, this will probably be the last level I managed to get on, because I've only got 1 life left. I think you do get extra lives for score. I'm not sure when they come. I can't remember if it's every 20,000 points or something like that. Just going to show this snowball in action, the freeze ball again, just here as well, because why not? So yeah, it allows an enemy to walk through you without doing you any damage, and you definitely need it here because otherwise you get hit by that elf there. So I might just make it through this level without losing a life. It's possible I'll lose a life, it's possible I won't. So the game's not perfect. There are a few little bits and pieces that I think could be better, and I know Rob is still working on trying to improve the game in some respects, so there might be further versions released that make it even better. But overall I think it's a really good game, certainly for a first time effort. I've got almost no energy left here, so this is going to be really tricky to get through. I need to run behind this elf and not get hit by him when he turns around. Oh, I've done it just. I've got no energy left, but somehow managed to survive the level. So yeah, it's a challenging game. I'm now on level 10 of 12. I'm not sure I mentioned how many levels there are. You do get a bit of health back when you start a new level though, so that's helped me out a little bit. This one's quite tricky because you've got to push this switch and then jump on here and then jump through the barrier before it reactivates itself. But I did manage it, so yay. But I'm absolutely positive I won't get any further than this level because this one is quite hard. This one is actually my favourite of the levels. The design of it's really clever, how you've got to make your way through the level and then back up round to the top. So I really like this one, but it is hard. I think I'll just skip that star there and just try and complete the level. I wasn't going to show this many levels off actually, and when I do die I'm not going to show any more off, so we'll see how it goes. Could actually complete this one as well. I'm doing pretty well considering I've only got 1 life left. But here you have to, got to collect these snowballs first. Oh no, that's it, that's going to be game over surely. No, I'm still hanging on by the skin of my teeth somehow. Here you've got to switch the barrier. No, there we go, he's got me now and that's game over. But you have to switch the barrier off up the top there and then go back down to the bottom. So there you go, that was a playthrough of most of the levels of Quasimodo's Christmas Caper. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you've got any thoughts about the game then let me know in the comments. I think it's a really good game for a first time effort. It's not perfect, but there are plenty of good aspects to it. The graphics are lovely, the sound's nice, the little tune in the background's good as well, and it's got some really good sort of arcade style gameplay elements where you've got to really think about the way you move through the level to get through it as quickly as possible, and also learn little tricks to get past the elves and things like that. So yeah, there's lots to explore in it. It is only 12 levels, but those levels will challenge you, especially if you play it on the higher difficulty settings. So as I said, it's available from rwxdesigns.itch.io. I'll leave a link to that in the pinned comment so you can go and check it out. It's available for, I think it's $3, which is a bit strange because it's a British developed game, but yeah, so I think it's worth that amount of money. And don't be put off by the fact that it's a Christmas game, because if you take the Christmas aspects of it away, it's still a very playable platform game. So good luck to Rob with this game and the future games that he's working on. He's got several other games in development. If you like the look of the game, then check it out, and if you've got any comments about it, as I said, please leave them in the video comments as always. So thanks very much for watching this video, the first of a brand new series. I will be looking at other brand new games for retro systems in the near future. So that's all for this one. Thanks very much, and bye for now.